Are you carrying a death sentence for your own future? Not from a judge, not from the world, from yourself. Some people walk through today, but their eyes are chained to the ashes of yesterday. They do not merely remember their failures. They kneel before them. They turn one old mistake into a lifelong identity. Then they wonder why nothing new will grow. You tell yourself that because you failed once, you no longer deserve a clean field, a fresh season, or a gentler life. So you keep planting the same dead pain, the same old fear, the same exhausted shame. And when no joy rises, you call it fate. Today's story is about a farmer named Orin, a man who spent years feeding his future to the corpse of one mistake, until one night he learned that the past may instruct you, but it has no right to own you. Stay with this story, because when Orin throws his rotten seeds into the fire, you may finally understand what it means to begin again. 10 years earlier, Orin made a mistake. A storm came. He had delayed. He had trusted the wrong sky, and by morning his harvest was gone. The village spoke of it for a few days. Then life moved on. But Orin did not. He kept one sack from that ruined season, a torn old bag filled with dead seed, blackened, hardened, lifeless. And over time that sack became more than memory. It became ritual. Every spring, while the valley filled with green again, Orin walked out with the rotten seeds. He scattered them across his field with trembling hands. Then he watered them, not with hope, with accusation. He stood over the soil, as if waiting for the earth to confirm his worst belief. He did not truly want those seeds to live. He wanted them to fail. He wanted the field to remain empty so he could whisper to the sky, "See, I told you. I knew I would ruin it again." Every morning, he returned to inspect the silence. Every empty patch felt like evidence. Every barren row felt like proof that his life had already been decided. This was not grief anymore. It was devotion to defeat. He was not planting seed. He was staging the same trial over and over, using the future as a witness against himself. The hut where he lived felt less like a home and more like a shrine to one ruined season. He touched that rotting sack like a holy relic, as if pain repeated long enough could become truth. One spring morning, an old farmer named Suri found Orin kneeling in the dirt. The valley was bright. Birdsong moved through the amber air. But Orin was feeding death to living ground. Suri watched him for a long moment. Then he stepped forward, reached into the sack, and pulled out one ruined seed. He crushed it between his fingers. It broke apart like ash. Then he said the sentence that shook Orin to the bone. "You are not planting seed. You are planting guilt. And the earth has never grown a single thing from ghosts." Orin lowered his head. "I do not deserve good seed," he murmured. Suri almost smiled, but there was sorrow in it. "The soil has no memory, Orin. The rain does not keep a record of your failure. The sun does not hold court against your hands. Only you do that." Then Suri knelt and pressed his palm into the field. "This ground does not hate you. It is waiting." Orin's jaw tightened. "You do not understand. I ruined everything." Suri looked at him with unnerving calm. "No, I understand too well." Then he pointed to the old sack. "That bag is not a punishment. It is a throne. You have seated your pain upon it like a king. You return to it every spring to bow." Orin flinched, because the words were cruelly true. Suri continued, "You think this is humility. It is not. It is the arrogance of sorrow. You keep telling the earth that your old failure must matter forever. You keep demanding that the field remember what even the seasons have already released." The wind moved through the dry grass. Suri picked up a handful of healthy seed from his pocket and held it beside the blackened grain from Orin's bag. Both are small, he said, but only one belongs to the present. Then he placed the good seed into Orin's palm. The past can be a teacher, but the moment you make it your master, it turns your life into a cemetery. Orin stared at the two seeds, one fit for planting, one fit only for burial, and suddenly he saw his own life with unbearable clarity. He had not been honoring the past. He had been feeding it, watering it, defending it. He had used today's breath to keep yesterday's corpse from finally returning to dust. That night, Orin built a fire outside his hut. The valley was still. Stars watched without judgment. He brought out the sack, the same sack he had carried for 10 years. The same sack that had become his chain, his altar, his excuse not to live. For a long time, he only stood there holding it. Then he opened it. The rotten seeds fell into his hands like dead teeth. And one by one, then by the handful, he threw them into the flames. They cracked, popped, collapsed into sparks. The sound was small, but to Orin it felt like iron breaking open. Each burst was an old sentence losing its power. Each hiss was a lock coming undone. By the time the sack was empty, Orin was crying. Not the crying of defeat, the crying of release. For the first time in 10 years, he was no longer the man who failed. He was simply a man still alive beneath the stars. And that was enough to begin. When the next season turned, Orin planted new seed, good seed, living seed. He pressed it into the same earth with the same hands. But this time there was no ceremony of self-hatred, no muttering to ghosts, no secret wish to remain barren. Only work, only weather, only patience. He rose early. He watered when the soil needed water. He waited when waiting was required. He watched for blight. He pulled weeds. He mended fences. Nothing mystical happened. The sky did not split open. No voice came from the clouds. The field answered, as fields do when living seed is given honest labor. First, a few shoots. Then rows of green. Then a season that looked ordinary to everyone else and miraculous only to him. Because that was the point. The earth had not been punishing him. It had never been punishing him. It had simply been waiting for something alive to be planted. By autumn, Orin stood in the most abundant harvest of his life. Not because heaven had changed, not because fate had finally pitied him, but because he had stopped bringing rotten seed to fresh soil. That is the truth. The past may scar you, it may humble you, it may teach you with a hard hand, but it does not own your next season unless you keep handing it the keys. So ask yourself gently, what old seed are you still carrying? What shame, what sentence, what dead name have you been planting into fresh ground? And what would happen if tonight you burned the bag? You do not need to earn permission to begin. Again, you do not need to become innocent before you become new. You only need the courage to stop calling a graveyard a garden. If this story met you where you are, write this below: I begin again. Not for performance, for release. For the field still waiting inside you, because the soil does not remember, and maybe for the first time in a long time, you should stop remembering, like a prison too.